Hello everyone, and welcome to Techstrong TV. Today is Thursday, January 5th, and I hope you all are having a wonderful day so far. I'm your host, William Willis, and in today's show, we're going to bring you some fantastic interviews with incredible guests from around the world, so stay tuned. As always, I'll start off with our Techstrong News recap, filling you in on the biggest tech headlines that are making waves. Then we go to Alan, where he meets with Eric Lieberson, co-founder and CTO of Pantera.io, to talk about why companies need to validate their security. Then Alan will speak to Andrew Davidson, Senior Vice President of Cloud Products at MongoDB, to talk about MongoDB's vision for a developer data platform called Atlas. Then Mitch sits down with Normalize CTO and co-founder Ravi Ital, as Ravi shares data security challenges in the cloud and how cloud-native containers, microservices, and cloud use cases are causal factors to widespread increase in proliferation of data. Then we go to AWS reInvent 2022, where Alan met with James McMurray, founder and CEO of Threat Hunter AI, to talk about the rebranding of Milton Security to Threat Hunter AI. Also at AWS reInvent, Alan met with Ashley Kramer, Chief Strategy and Marketing Officer at GitLab, to talk about how companies can operate with an open source mindset. Then Mike Rothman speaks to Bob Rudis, Vice President of Data Science for Gray Noise Intelligence, about the state of security detection and how data science and intelligence is poised to make a difference in 2023. Then we have 2 episodes of View with Vizard. In the first episode, Mike Vizard interviews Remote.it CEO Ryo Koyama, as Ryo explains why the simplest way to implement zero trust cybersecurity is to add 1 line of code to a TCP/IP networking stack. Then Mike interviews Nupur Davis, Executive Vice President, Chief Information Security and Product Privacy Officer for Comcast, as Nupur explains what it takes to secure the connected home as the number of cybersecurity attacks being aimed at these remote systems and applications continues to escalate. Then we go to KubeCon Cloud Native Con North America, where Alan met with the co-founder and CEO of Asserto, Omri Gazit, to discuss Asserto's authorization as a service solution. Also at KubeCon Cloud Native Con, Mitch met with Nuri Golan, co-founder and CEO of Sosivio, to discuss the predictive troubleshooting platform for Kubernetes. Then we go to Qualys Security Conference 2022, where Alan met with Alex Alvenos, the Senior Director of IT Security at GLS, to discuss operationalizing cyber risk reduction with patch management and some of the best practices. Also at Qualys Security Conference, Alan met with Eugene Ostapenko, the head of information security, risk, and compliance at Ilion, to talk about how to provide better security and how to better understand the costs involved. And that's what we have coming up for you on this episode of Techstrong TV. So without further ado, let's get the show started. Enjoy.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond, CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and MediaOps CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
Hi again, everyone. Here are the headlines for January 5th. First up, a group of video game testers have formed the first ever labor union at Microsoft. This Tuesday, approximately 300 quality assurance workers from Microsoft's subsidiary, ZeniMax Studios, voted to join the union. While there have been talks of unionizing long before Microsoft purchases ZeniMax, the campaign was exacerbated by Microsoft's bid to buy Activision Blizzard, with the company promising neutrality if workers sought to form a union. Zooming out, though, this is a big step forward, as unionization is still relatively uncommon in tech and gaming industries. Next, Sam Bankman-Fried, the founder of FTX, has pleaded not guilty to charges of defrauding investors. On Tuesday, in the Manhattan Federal Court, Bankman-Fried denied charges of using his money for trades at his hedge fund and for lavish real estate purchases. The judge presiding at the court set a court date of October 2nd, meaning that the story is far from over, so we have to see as this develops. While on the subject of cryptocurrency, Coinbase reached a $100 million settlement with New York regulators. The New York state regulators fined Coinbase $50 million because it allowed customers to open accounts without extensive background checks, which went against anti-money laundering laws. Additionally, another $50 million was required to boost compliance efforts at blocking criminals from using Coinbase's services. Coinbase has since addressed these problems, but this settlement comes as Coinbase has been receiving more and more scrutiny from regulators ranging from the DFS to the SEC. Next up, Salesforce has announced that it would cut 10% of its current workforce, which the move would affect over 7,000 employees. Additionally, Salesforce has stated that it might have to shut down offices in some markets. Salesforce is citing the challenging economic environment and hiring too many people throughout the pandemic because of this. This might sound like deja vu, as Salesforce announced a previous round of layoffs in early November of last year. This announcement shows that while we are entering a new year, the current economic environment has no means of changing anytime soon. On Digital CXO, we have an article looking at some of the trends for the year ahead. While 2023 is going to have its surprises, there are several trends that will be at the front and center for technology enterprises. This article looks at 5 of these trends. To learn more, go to digitalcxo.com. On DevOps.com, we have an article looking at why DevOps must embrace automation in 2023. Chronosphere surveyed over 500 engineering and software development professionals and found that DevOps teams spend over 10 hours trying to understand incidents, with over 96% saying that they spend most of their time resolving low-level issues. To learn more about the results of the survey, go to DevOps.com. Finally, on Container Journal, we have an article reviewing what happened with cloud-native technologies in 2022. 2022 was a great year for cloud-native, especially Kubernetes. This article looks at some of the major takeaways from 2022's Kubernetes coverage. To learn more, go to containerjournal.com. And that's today's Techstrong News Recap.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Techstrong TV. Our guest for this next segment on Techstrong TV is Eric Liebezon. Eric is with Pantera, but he has an interesting background and we're going to hear all about it. We'll hear more about Pantera. Eric, welcome to Techstrong TV.
Thanks, Alan. Great to be here.
Nice to have you here. So Eric, I spoke a little bit about your background, but I didn't say anything. I'm letting you tell them. Give us a little bit of your background.
Great. So if you ask about my background, I need to go back, to my last role in the IDF. I actually founded and led the computer warfare group in one of the most classified units in Israel. It was that classified because of, we dealt with very unique technologies, and cyber was really relevant. But, as you probably know, for the past more than 20 years, the best practice in the industry, in IT industry in general, to test yourself whether you're secured or not, is actually to do red teaming and pen testing and all that. So I actually founded this group in the classified unit. And what we did, for our living was to pen test and red team our special infrastructures and networks. And, surprisingly, you find that although it's really, really secured, all those networks are really, really secured, still, time and time again, you're able to get to the crown jewels of every network, which, makes you think or realize that pen testing is really a powerful activity, right? And it's something very unique in IT that you can actually go and pen test yourself like a ethical hacker, see if there are any vulnerabilities, and if there are, No problem. Give the report. Tell the security guys where they need to, what they need to do in order to hygiene their network or environment. And then you're free to go. And it's a good thing that you, as a ethical hacker, found those vulnerabilities and not the bad guys. So, so while doing this, me and my guys, we got to realize how good it is, but still, it has many drawbacks. It takes a lot of time. The coverage is quite poor. It costs a lot of money. And the results are actually relevant only for a point in time. Environments and networks, are, I would say, organic. They change all the time, day by day. So after 1 month, it's actually a different environment, but you cannot go back and pen test it because you have many other projects to do. And this is where, I got to this idea that, maybe it's possible to automate this powerful activity. And then you eliminate humans and you keep only the good thing of pen testing. And this is how, I decided that I quit the army. It was back in 2015. And I want to start my own company with this exact idea, to build an automated pen testing platform, okay, which will enable, my future customers to have continuous security validation with a click of a button.
Yeah.
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay,
and that is Pentera.
And this is Pentera. So the company was founded back in 2015. Today, we are around 300 employees. We actually concluded in last December our 5th fundraising rounds. We're backed with great VCs and private equities like Insight Partners, AWZ, Blackstone, K1, Evolution. Give or take, they invested in us around $200 million so far, selling around the globe, in America, Latin America, Europe, APAC, Africa, Eastern Europe, the Middle East, whatever. And the product is actually relevant, to every kind of company, no matter what the size is, and no matter what the industry is, because it's actually relevant to everyone, because this is pen testing.
Yeah. So, look, as we spoke off camera, I've been involved in security 25 years myself. Pen testing is not necessarily new. Red team, blue team has been around a long time. As a matter of fact, I remember my friend Tony worked at NSA, and he was working on their red team, blue team stuff years and years, probably 15 years ago. And I don't think our audience is a security audience. No one in our audience is going to say, oh, you don't need pen testing. I think, the idea of whether you want to call it the hacker's eye view, the pen test, people know it. I have many friends who travel around the world doing, in essence, pen testing and that kind of stuff. There's always been two things that prevent pen testing let's call it pen testing at scale. Number one, there's more than just that pen test scan, right? Whether you're using, what's HD more? Metasploit or something like that. Yeah, you could do that and say you did a pen test. But that's not really a real, right? Generally speaking, you needed someone like you or the people who worked with you who would really, in their hands, a tool like Metasploit or other tools really becomes a tool. But on top of that, it was more than the scan. It was the social engineering. It was the physical security aspects. It was the whole, how can a hacker get in here? How can a bad guy get in here? And it was always sort of labor intensive, people intensive. It wasn't the kind of thing you could automate. How do you How do you automate dropping USB keys in the parking lot and wait to see who brings them in and plugs them in, and what you can get? How do you automate those things? And then but even just forget the social engineering, just doing the pen testing. The automation of it is hard. It's never, it's not been done. For instance, our friends at Cobalt, I'm sure you probably compete with them, you know them. They do pen testing as crowdsourced pen testing as a service. But what they're really doing is matching up with a pen tester who does the pen testing, right? So I realize you can't give away the company jewels, but how'd you automate this?
Wow. So it's a great question. Listen, when I started, Pantera, formerly it was called Sciences, most people told me, listen, you cannot automate this. So, and it sounds so reasonable because it's a kind of art, right? Pen testing and hacking and attacking. But, I think that everything could be automated. But you need to understand, the process, okay, of pen tester, or actually hacker. Pen tester is actually a hacker. It's only ethical, right?
Mm-hmm.
They start with scanning. They need to know what is the environment, what's the scope. And then after realizing what the scope is, they need to enumerate each and every device to figure out whether it's a router, a switch, a Windows machine, a Linux server, whatever. After that, you look for static vulnerabilities, CVEs, okay? And then you can start actually exploiting one by one, or you can actually trap users who are quite dynamic in the organization or in the network. If one of these is successful, then you can move on to the post-exploitation phase. And then let's say that you grab some passwords from a service in the operating system. Great. Now you have new data that you can use to actually propagate your attack. So what I actually told you here is very dynamic, step by step, but this is exactly how hackers and pen testers are working. And this is exactly the way Pantera works. We actually modeled, the scanning phase. After that, the enumeration phase. After that, the vulnerability scanning phase, the exploitation, the post-exploitation, and so on and so forth. So today we know that it's possible. I can tell you that back then in 2015, most people thought it's not feasible, but indeed it is. But if you would ask me, so no need for human pen testers, I would say absolutely no. Of course, we need human pen testers. Why? You still have some exotic, infrastructures or products, some new products that were not yet modeled by Pantera, for example, okay? And for this, you still need humans. But the bread and butter, you can actually use automated products and you have great coverage. Okay, so don't forget that now that we're successful to automate all this, look at the good, the half glass full. The coverage is enormous. You can do it on a daily basis, which, whatever pen testing type you want, whether it's applicative, web, infrastructure, whatever. You can do it day after day. You can actually train your SOC team, whatever, just because it's here and it's with a click of a button.
Yep. I'm reminded, so back in 2003, I started a security company in 2001. Out in Boulder. 2003, we launched a vulnerability scanner. And back in those days, you remember Foundstone, Tenable, Qualys, Rapid7 wasn't even born yet. And in those days, you would have to put a scanner inside the network. And you had to have all your logons to show anything. And then all of a sudden it was Qualys was actually storing stuff. There was no cloud, but Qualys was storing stuff outside. But they really started scanning from outside. Not quite pen testing, right? This is before Metasploit, that kind of thing. And we started getting that so-called hacker's eye view, right? But I see the same sort of thing here now, where, you know, what started out as a very what's the word I'm looking for? Like a cottage industry, a very labor-intensive onesies and twosies kind of business, is now scalable because of something like this. I guess my next question is, okay, that's great. I could do a once a week, once a quarter, once a month pen test scanning service. If it follows the same path as we saw in vulnerability, the next question is, what do we do about the pen test results? Can we automate closing down these holes? Can we automate, you know, stopping bad guys from exploiting this stuff?
Great question. Listen, vulnerability scanners are great, okay? But the problem with vulnerability scanners is they're lacking the context, and they don't show you attack chains, and they're only looking for CVEs, okay? But hackers work a little bit different. Of course, they're looking for CVEs because, you know, then maybe they have a foot in the door. But most likely they will try to trap or use some promiscuous behavior of employees, right, or users. And this is something that scanners don't really do. And let's say that something was exploitable. You found out you were using the scanner and something was exploitable. Who said that this, you know, this specific server is really important for the organization? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's only, you know, a lab server, you know, connected to nothing. Okay, so what if the CVSS of this vulnerability is 10 out of 10? What's the context? And when you use an automated pen testing platform, now you have the context, and you can relate to the business aspect of the client or of the network, right? You can show the attack chains, starting from a starting point, hoping to a different server, and then to a remote desktop, whatever. But you're very dynamic, exactly like human hackers, and they're the enemy, right? Second thing is that vulnerability scanners are lacking, you know, the prioritization, just as you mentioned, right? If I will use vulnerability scanner and see 50,000 vulnerabilities, what can I do with it, right? I guess nothing. I wouldn't even start patching the first vulnerability, because then I would be left with 50,000 minus one. So we need some prioritization mechanism. And if you show the attack chain, you actually get to realize what are the root causes of your environment or your posture. Let's say that 10 vectors actually started from the same vulnerability. So what if this severity is only 2.3 out of 10? Still, it's a root cause. Go and fix that one. And maybe after that, you don't need to fix additional 200 vulnerabilities, because you actually cut, the chain.
Sure.
This is a different perspective, and it's much more fruitful,
it's more bang for the buck, right? How do you get the most bang for the buck? I'm reminded, I don't know if you know Giddy Cohen, right? Skybox Security, do you know Giddy?
Yeah.
The first time I remember they drew those maps, the attack vector maps. The first time I saw that, I don't know, 2005, 2006, something like that. Wow. It opened that was a whole new world to me, right? And the idea of you didn't even really have to fix any, You know, you didn't necessarily have to fix a vulnerability. You could just close the access to that vulnerability right over a port or however you want. So there's a tremendous amount of intelligence in there. The problem is the automation, and the issue is, as our networks have gotten bigger and more complex, and the cloud and here and there and everywhere, it's very hard to get humans wrapped around all that. It almost demands automation. So that's why I'm sure, you know, Pantera's success is wrapped very closely into that. Anyway, hey, we're past time, but for people who want to get more information about Pantera, where can they go?
They can actually reach us, through the website.
Is that Pantera.com or?
Pantera.io.
IO, okay.
They can request a demo or a POV. You know, running a POV for us takes only a few hours from start to end. The results that they're going to see are, mind-blowing, really. Mm-hmm. They will see exactly how the attack is propagating. They would get so much value, and so very easy. And we will be happy,
Sure. Let me ask you a business question. How is it priced?
So it's a subscription model, an annual license. We have several products. We have the core for the internal, the surface from the external, the ransomware ready module, and the credentials exposure. So it really depends on the size of the network. And it's based on, the number of endpoints you have in the organization. Very, very simple, easy to digest, make a lot of sense.
Excellent. Eric, thanks for coming on and talking to our audience a little bit today. Good luck with Pantera. Keep us posted on what's going on, okay?
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Eric Librazon from Pantera here on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Techstrong TV. I'm happy to welcome back Andrew Davidson. He's SVP of Products at MongoDB. First of all, Andrew, hey man, welcome back to Techstrong. It's good to see you.
Great to see you too, Alan. Wonderful to be back. And, I was just thinking how the last time I was on, I think we were peak pandemic, and now I'm back in the office. Look how far we've come.
Yes, we have. I was just going to say, the last time I saw you, you were holed up in the house.
That's right.
Doing these things. But I remember how excited you were. It was the announcement of Atlas, right? The Atlas service. And Jesus, it's got to be a year and a half ago now, at least.
Maybe absolutely more. Yeah. I think that was the 5-year anniversary. We're easily 6.5 years in now.
Yep. So that's exactly what it was, a year and a half. And look, exactly. Look how far we've come. You're back in the office. We were just talking about being out in Vegas for AWS reInvent and
all the people
who got sick out there. And
so I guess we haven't come as far as we think.
Yep. But Andrew, you mentioned already, Atlas is about 6.5 years old, but it's one of the kind of crown jewels in the MongoDB universe. Why don't, for people out here in the audience who are not familiar, why don't you give them a little recap primer on Atlas?
Totally, yeah. So let's go up a level real quick. Not everyone's familiar with MongoDB or necessarily where we are today. And Atlas is, of course, MongoDB Atlas is really the core part of our company's strategy today. But if we take a big step back, I think it all starts with this realization that modern businesses in the digital economy, they live and die on how productively they can build and evolve with software, the ability to respond to threats, the ability to disrupt industries, the ability to, not be disrupted, really fundamentally lives and dies on that ability to empower software developers, essentially the artisans of our time, to build that software. And if you look at where developers spend most of their time, traditionally, it's basically wrestling with state or wrestling with data. And so MongoDB's core thesis from the very beginning has always been that making developers more productive by addressing this core pain of how hard it is to wrestle with data really will unlock agility for operating as a software company, which is increasingly critical for every type of company. Everyone's operating as a software company today. So our core strategy in MongoDB Atlas is centered on this idea that we conceptualize ourselves as a developer data platform. And we think a developer data platform is made up of three key attributes. The first is that it must be centered on a modern data model. It must be the model that developers think and code with. It's a document model, a JSON style model. Documents are special because they're the superset of data models. But the second key attribute of a developer data platform is that it should be possible to drive the vast majority of types of workloads behind that developer interface. You should be able to do operational, transactional, and search, and app-driven analytics, and time series, multi-region and distributed global applications, device-centric applications, serverless event-driven applications, all of these different form factors for applications. You should be able to do all of them behind that same elegant interface. Why does that matter? It allows for standardization. You can build the vast majority of your modern applications with the same developer data platform. And the third and final key attribute is that this should all be accessible on top of a secure, elastic, truly multi-cloud foundation available in over 100 regions around the world. That's what MongoDB Atlas enables today, and that's why we have over 39,000 customers building amazing things, ranging from disruptive startups to some of the most amazing enterprises in the world, companies like Vodafone and Volvo, and 2/3 of the companies mentioned in the AWS reInvent keynote, just to show how intimately tied in we've always been to the AWS fabric.
Absolutely.
And, well, it's not news to our audience. There were 55,000 people out there at reInvent this year, and it reaffirmed really just the breadth and width of that community and what a force it is, right? I mean, we were talking off camera, Andrew, and look, there's a lot going on in the database world, right? We've certainly moved beyond SQL, though there's still a place for the Postgreses and all that, right?
Sure.
But today's world functions at such speed and scale, and I think one of the big stories when I look back at 2022 is the primacy of data, right? We've spent so long, I think we lived in an app-centric world. The app was the king, right? We're developing apps. There's an app for that. There's an app for this. But what we forgot, it's the data that drives all this stuff, right? That's why we have the apps, because of the data and collecting that data and using that data. And the way we want to connect data and, display data and analyze data, it's I don't want to say it's infinite, but it's infinite, right? I mean, there's just, there's a lot going on. I guess my question to you is, okay, so now Atlas is 6.5 years old. You got AWS. You also have Google and Microsoft. You have a whole bunch of different, there's the Oracle Cloud. There's IBM. There's all different stuff out there. And you don't have to keep it in a public cloud either, for that matter.
Sure.
SaaS, as a service offerings are dominating. How does Atlas stay on top of the pack?
It's a great question. Well, and I'm gonna answer that by going back to something you were mentioning a moment ago, which is the sort of primacy of data. And what's interesting about that phenomenon is, and because we have a technical viewer base here, I think people will intimately understand this, but I think the average person on the street, when you ask them what does data mean to them, they typically jump to a very specific subset of the data ecosystem. And they think about what I think we in sort of the data world might call analytics, because they jump to this idea of, hey, I need to derive insights from data, almost like the glorified spreadsheet. We all know what a spreadsheet is. Regular folks know. People on the street know what a spreadsheet is, fine. And so this idea of deriving insights from data is pretty intuitive to people. What it turns out is counterintuitive to regular folks is that operational, or what we sometimes call transactional data, which is really the lifeblood, almost the lubricant of the digital economy, that's what's so hidden away. And yet it is where the center of gravity for spend and criticality in the data ecosystem is. And how is it that this huge phenomenon in data is something that's so hidden away that we don't understand it, or that the average people don't know it exists? And I think it's because you hit the nail on the head. It's actually, it's hidden by these wonderful applications that abstract it away.
Right.
When I order my, Lyft, I'm not thinking about the database behind the scene. I'm thinking about getting a car to go to where I'm trying to go, or similar. Mm-hmm. That's the same way with all the software we use. You don't think about the state behind the scenes, but that operational transactional state that makes it possible to do all of this, it is the critical part of the economy that's sort of doing all this heavy lifting all the time. And it makes it all possible. And so, going to your question on how does Atlas stay ahead of the pack? I mean, it's fundamentally because Atlas, first and foremost, that is our core. It is powering operational transactional workloads. With that expansion that I mentioned into capabilities beyond that, coming from the fact that where the data is born and originally put to use, that's also where you can make it searchable and make it, possible to do those app-driven analytics on top of it. But having the data where it's born and put immediately to use, being operational transactional at one's core, puts you in a position of being able to really talk to your customers, in our case, developers, builders, software architects, et cetera, about what it is that they need to build the software of tomorrow. And we're just so obsessed with that and constantly talking to our customers about what is it going to take? What is it really going to look like to build, that next great idea from something small, finding one's own product market fit with one's own software, with one's own application, whether with end consumers or for internal business processes, validating and growing from there and evolving. And it turns out this key part of it is this ability to evolve. Traditional ways of building software where you'd kind of figure it all out up front and then you would just build it and, kind of more of a waterfall approach. We all know that we've moved away from that. Now, two pizza teams need to be autonomous in building incredible pieces of software from day one that are always being invested in. There's a roadmap. It's based on their own product market fit and their own customers' needs. The ability to modify software is so important. And that's why you need a flexible, scalable developer data platform that sits behind it, that allows you to keep up with the needs of the application as its needs evolve. The alternative paradigm and what we've seen folks do over the years is to start with maybe more of a legacy model, starting with, let's say, a relational database. And then for each feature in their application that kind of bursts beyond what that could service, whether it required flexibility or scalability or any number of other important criteria, you'd bolt on these other engines. And then you'd kind of find yourself in the spaghetti code challenge of lots of ETL systems, lots of bolt-on engines, a search engine over here, a caching layer over there to bring it all together and make it cohesive. And if you look at that alternative paradigm, what we've come to realize is basically the customer is sprawling, the developer sprawling across lots of different APIs, lots of different management paradigms, which leads to all kinds of governance challenges, and all this brittle ETL that breaks, and it's costly. And we've realized we can just flip this whole concept on its head and go back to that vision of the single interface for the vast majority of your application's stateful needs, the developer data platform vision. That really has helped inform our strategy, and it allows us to keep executing in Atlas. If you were to ask me what's our top priority right now, I would probably say building the awareness and going bigger and bigger in terms of use for Atlas Search, because search is everywhere, and not all of us recognize or even imagine that it's possible that in our main data service that powers our applications, we would just get search out of the box for free, but that's what's there in Atlas. And so this realization that we could really execute in a way that truly transformed the idea of how to build software, I think that's what's thus far allowed us to execute. Now, we can't rest on our laurels, that's for sure. It's a competitive market.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I get that for sure. Sitting here listening to Andrew, do you explain this? I think back 2008, 2009, NoSQL kind of burst on the screen. Maybe it was 2007 and 8. NoSQL burst on the scene, right? I interviewed, I forget who it was, but it was like the first CEO over there at Mongo. And, what was the reason? Well, it allowed us to just store data and access data and make connections with data without being tied into the schema, if you will, of the whole SQL database thing, and tables and all of that crap. And here we are talking about what keeps Atlas on top of it today. It's still at the core. That's what it's about.
It's a great point. Some of my colleagues would say, it's wonderful to conceptualize ourselves as a developer data platform, as if that's a new phenomenon for us. And I would almost say we've always, in my view, been a developer data platform. If you think about that moment you were just mentioning, 2009, let's say, 2010, AWS had just been born, MongoDB had just been born, and another key trend, the iPhone had just been born. And what this combination of factors, the iPhone was leading to this proliferation of new levels of scalable application requirements, including geospatial primitives like never before. AWS had enabled commodity hardware as a service, which, everyone at that moment in time was like, cool, I get to operate like Amazon or like Google. This is awesome.
Right.
But if you think about it, having a bunch of commodity hardware is available at your fingertips is super empowering. However, if you're a developer, what you need is something that enables you to turn a distributed system, a cluster of that hardware, into something relevant to you. And MongoDB kind of rode that wave at the perfect time. It wasn't just that it was this incredible document data model at its core with flexible schema and all that. It was also that it was a distributed system that could make relevant these early commodity hardware building blocks that AWS was democratizing. In a way, that's why I think of MongoDB and AWS as two peas in a pod. Developers needed something that would translate this document interface into a bunch of compute on the back end that AWS is making it available. And we rode that wave. They rode it with us. The demand of the applications in that moment that the iPhone was driving pulled us into the direction of geospatial primitives. And then over time, we were able to keep reinvesting multi-document asset transactions, mission criticality, and then basically, eventually we realized we could be the best database in the world delivered as pure software. But guess what? People will end up using other databases that aren't as good, that are managed as this fully automated service.
Right.
If that became a critical...
Well, that's the way the world went.
Yeah, so we went all in. We realized we need to disrupt ourselves. We can't be worried about this. We have to go all in and go up a level of abstraction. We were pulled by our customers in that direction and go all in for fully automated service, MongoDB Atlas. And of course, that opens up so many changes in how you can conceptualize. You're no longer managing low-level plumbing. Now it's all declarative. And if you think about it, that declarative model for the infrastructure that Atlas brings is very analogous to the declarative model that we brought for the data plane, the document model. And so marrying these two, enabling a two-pizza team to move fast, that's not just great for the two-pizza team. It's a game changer for large enterprises. If you've got dozens or hundreds of those two-pizza teams, for them to all be able to, build their app dev assembly line on top and whip it all up, automated infrastructure as code with great DevOps culture, and to do it in a standard developer data platform that that they can build on top of for the vast majority of their applications, everybody wins, and they're not locked into a particular hyperscaler.
Agreed. I'm
listening to you. So I think another story around Dev Summit, I'm on year-end stuff, right? We've got our Predict show coming up in early January about what's big in 2023 and stuff. I think another story around DevOps for 2022 is I think for the most part, the world got the two-pizza team concept down pat, right? The problem is when you go to large enterprises, there's a lot of two-pizza teams in the average company, right? It's not unusual to have 50, 100, hundreds of two-pizza teams. And I think some of the, mega success stories in cloud native and DevOps and, at SaaS kind of stuff is the ability to recognize that in an organization and make it easy for the organization to standardize on a particular solution and still allow the dozens of two-pizza teams independence, autonomy, if you will, but still using the same solution the rest of the company uses, right? I wonder, I don't know if you track that at Atlas, but
massively. I mean, this is I mean, this is the music to my ears what you're describing. I mean, this is totally how we have seen this play out. In the early days of Atlas, before we were battle tested and trusted in the enterprise, we would have smaller companies and startups adopting us primarily. And in the years to come, subsequent to that time, when we started earning that trust, earning those chops to be understood, to be able to run in an operational sense. You asked about SaaS earlier, the pace of operating a true mission critical SaaS, it's something that doesn't happen overnight. You have to build and earn that right. So once you get to the point where you're running some of the largest applications in the world, banking, government use cases, mission critical software for consumer scale applications, et cetera, once we earned that right and our customers learned how to build on top of us, we started seeing this play out where our customers would utilize our control plane primitives to essentially enable each of their two pizza teams to experience their own level of autonomy. And you're hitting the nail on the head. That allows those teams to move fast, to never feel, held back. But the alternative, you could do that, let's say, in just directly on a hyperscaler. So the question might be, well, what does Atlas do that's different than that? And I think we talked about it before that if you go and use the hyperscaler, what ends up happening is you're sprawling yourself across hundreds of services, hundreds of primitives. And so, I jokingly say, imagine that you took a bunch of two pizza teams and asked them to each go into a Home Depot, which is empowering. Who doesn't love a Home Depot? But if you asked each of those two pizza teams, go build a house, you're going to see all kinds of chaos. I mean, the average house built by some random group of people is going to be just chaos. So what if instead you could, instead of it being hundreds of services, you can kind of collapse it into the best in breed, best in category abstractions that you can compose with. You're not feeling held back by them. They're just understood to be, instead of hundreds of offerings, you're building with these really good, solid building blocks. And everybody then wins. The standardization governance folks at the enterprise win because they don't have to be Dr. No. And the builders win because they don't have to try and make sense of building with rebar as well as sinks and everything else in between. So, I think we've definitely seen that trend. And it's funny, I remember speaking to enterprise developers, and I remember them telling me things like, I'd love to use Atlas, but my security team would never allow me to use something like that. And I always tell them, it's funny you say that because it's totally the opposite. You think they won't allow you to use something, but actually what they want is you to have standardization and governance and to be building on this assembly. Yeah.
Right.
So oftentimes people are saying that they just don't want to go down the road of even having to worry about the complexity of doing their own internal governance. But we've seen it time and time again in every major enterprise as we go through the approval process and they kind of understand how we operate and, and it makes us stronger each step of the way, or it chips in the armor.
Look, to be fair to the developer, and I'm a security dude, so I'm not banging on security people. Sure. But to be fair to the developers,
it wouldn't be the first time the security people said, no, you can't do that. Right?
Because
no, I know.
That's what we do.
I love empowering the security people to be like, hey,
absolutely.
Once the security people really understand this model of better abstractions.
There's guardrails here, and there's rules, and it's an environment. Right.
You can't turn off TLS network encryption, authentication everywhere, and encryption everywhere. Those three things out of the gate, it's amazing how you just make it so you just pull away the idea of even having to worry about TLS certificate management. Boom, encryption over the wire everywhere. Non-negotiable.
Absolutely.
In 2022, that's just normal. It should be normal, but sadly it's not yet in many contexts.
No, but I think that's another thing that's coming in 2023. Even at the consumer level, we're going to see encryption everywhere.
Love it.
Anyway, hey man, we're running low on time. For people who want to get more information, Andrew, on Atlas, where? I mean, I know it's MongoDB. Is it MongoDB/Atlas, or where do they go?
Just come to our website, mongodb.com. You'll find Atlas from there. We have a forever free tier. It's fantastic for building that next idea. We have 150,000 people signing up every single month doing exactly that. Cool. There's a massive community. We have MongoDB University with, large scale courses that you can do at your own pace. We've got amazing documentation. We're built for developers to learn and quickly start building. So welcome to our community.
Andrew, let's not wait a year and a half to have you back on. Okay, man?
Look forward to it, Alan. Great to see you again.
All right, Andrew Davidson, MongoDB Atlas. Go check it out. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong TV. We'll be back in a minute.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
This is Techstrong TV.
With the great pleasure of being joined by Ravi Aital. Ravi is CTO and co-founder with Normalize. Welcome, Ravi. Good to be talking with you.
Good to be here, Mitch.
You were talking about a number of my favorite subjects. We'll get to that in just a moment, but why don't you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you and also about Normalize.
Yeah, so my name is Ravi Aital, co-founder and CTO at Normalize. I've been an engineer pretty much my entire career, all the way starting in the early 2000s. Have seen multiple evolutions of, move to the cloud, IaaS, SaaS, PaaS, and so on. Also was a co-founder at Netscope, which is handling a lot of data security in SaaS. And prior to that, I was a founding engineer at Palo Alto Networks, which is a great household name for network appliances in the on-prem world.
Mm-hmm. Very much so, very much so. So tell us a little bit about Normalize and what Normalize does.
At Normalize, we are trying to solve the problem of explosion of data and all the problems that it's causing. There are a bunch of trends that are happening in the way applications are being built. A few years ago, it used to be all monoliths with one single data store. Now, the same application is being built with 10 different microservices with 10 different data stores. That caused an explosion in data stores. Amount of data is exploding. The number of changes to data is exploding. And along with that comes feature velocity, which is good, but also potential for data security issues, which has been real hard for security professionals. Normalize is trying to help bridge that gap that we have seen in the market. By producing a product that helps security professionals get an understanding of all the data stores, classify the data, and understand risks around the data.
Excellent. Yeah, it's the changes in the architecture, the way we create applications, also just the location of data, right? And we're proliferating to the edge and all the way out to IoT devices or serverless or one cloud, multiple clouds, plus what we have on-prem. So it seems like we're exploding vertically and horizontally.
Absolutely. So it all makes sense if you go back to the history of how things evolved. Even if you go back just 10, 15 years ago, applications were developed and built and deployed on-prem with data stores or servers that had to be manually provisioned. So there is only so much speed at which data stores and data could get created. Then came the cloud, which gave the elasticity. So DevOps, developers could go and provision these data stores and servers in the cloud, but they were still kind of following the same method as how you would go about in an on-prem world, right? So you go to the console, create something, hit create, and then wait for it to image itself. Then it's ready, hand it off to the developer deploys something. It's still the servers are in the cloud, but still the process is still on-prem, right? Then something magical happened with the cloud native world, which is obviously there were a few things like Docker that were the early pioneers of how do you package applications and make them deploy easily. Then came the container orchestration systems like ECS, EKS, and so on, which ended up really enabling developers to move fast. So that created this culture of building applications using microservices, which enables teams to go as fast as they can. And when they're going as fast as they can, they want to create and maintain their own data stores. So they keep their own data stores. Every microservice has its own data stores, and microservices talk to each other using APIs, right? So now suddenly security, like there are two pieces of information that security has to handle. What is the data that you're keeping? Is it sensitive? Is it really something that needs to be protected? Which used to be in one place, but now it's in 10 places, right? So that is the one explosion that cannot be dealt with manually. The second one is obviously like, what are you sharing? Who has access to it? And based on who has access to it, what are the risks associated with those and so on, right? So these two, somehow, we see this all the time. When IT moves fast, security kind of falls behind. Security has to catch up. And that is the gap that is that is creating the need for this product that we're building at this point.
Like going from exponential to factorial, it's increased. As everything gets smaller, there becomes a lot more of them, right? So we had one big monolith application. Now we have tens, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of microservices. And good microservice design is the autonomy, right? Independence and autonomy. So it's not dependent upon code running and other than through API calls and things like that. And of course, we can replicate those across. So it may be multiple instances of it.
That's right. So another trend that is coming in is, especially something that picked up in the last 5-6 years is infrastructure as code. So by building your entire deployment environments as code, there are obviously multiple advantages. You can replicate them, you can create a brand new environment, you throw away the old one, create a new one, and so on for testing or pen testing or quality testing or whatnot. At the same time, it's also very easy. Like since provisioning a server, you don't need to lift and shift a server and rack it up somewhere. It's just copy paste a line of code, and then you have another server, right? So that is creating a lot of explosion as well. Not always, that's not always bad, replicating and duplicating data and so on. But since it's so easy, people are finding applications that can benefit, or use cases that can benefit from such ease of use, which is creating a headache for data security professionals.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. I've mentioned to a few folks when I was at KubeCon in Detroit, North America, there are two trends that I picked up on that sort of bubble up to the surface even more than they've been talked about before. One was developer productivity, driven largely by the economy. The other was data and data management, data security, data proliferation. I remember the days of, to get to the data, you had to go to the DBA and through the access controls and whoever the data owner was in the business, all those kind of single points, right? And to your what you're describing now about the cloud native world that's opened wide up, really. And I'm not sure who the data owner is anymore, but certainly there's a proliferation of data everywhere. That's right. I don't know if you heard about how, I don't want to say cloud native is the root of all evil, but it's enabling speeds to such an extent that we see the repercussions in many cases, especially with respect to security. Think about, go back a few years. If you wanted to scale out one of your applications, you had to stand up a server. Of course, the provisioning aspect is still there. But somehow everything is manual. So it almost feels like I'm kind of getting nostalgic. If you go back to that era, you really know, you can actually, the security guy can go and watch over a DevOps guy and then make sure he does a good job, and then security's job is done, right? Of course, it was never that way. There's always some other surface that you leave open. But today what's happening is the cloud native technologies have enabled such huge scale at such ease that any problem, whatever surface was left open, is being exponentially magnified, right? So let's say you had a small configuration mistake in one of your servers. That would show up. Your detection systems would point that out, and then it would show up. And then the security person had probably a whole day to go and fix it, and then go home knowing that that thing is patched. But today what's happening is those things are getting auto-scaled. An average workload in the cloud is, it runs in the order of minutes, not hours or days, but in the order of minutes. So things can come up, go down. And when you want to scale, you won't have if each container has one issue and you scale it out to 100 containers in front of a load balancer,
you have 100 issues now to fix, right? So any detection mechanism automatically is also detecting, an order or 2 orders of magnitude higher number of issues. So the moment, let's say, something like a log4j vulnerability comes out, you don't have 1 or 2 machines you want to fix. You have 1,000 machines you want to fix, right? Or if you have an infrastructure as code rule that gives access to a certain role, instead of that access being, let's say it's an excessive permission, instead of that being excessive permission in the case of a single server, now you have scaled it out to 1,000 containers. So you have 1,000 access control issues, right? So in effect, what's happening is cloud native is scaling the positives as well as the negatives. The negatives are not that big, but still scaling it out, right? And then what happens to the security folks? They have to go look at all these issues. Out of these 1,000 issues of access and 1,000 issues of vulnerability, what should I prioritize? That's where data really comes into picture, because ultimately any company's InfoSec team is protecting the company's data more than anything else, right? So when you put data at the center of your security strategy, how do you prioritize the rest of your work in order to, serve that objective? That's where DSPMs also come into picture. That's how we are trying to build our product as well. Put data at the center of your security strategy, and then derive all your subsequent decisions about what to prioritize, what to fix, and so on, with respect to what's at stake in terms of data, right? So if you use normalize product, for example, you will see a list of all your data stores, monetary value. So let's say you have 1,000 issues, 10 of them correspond to a data store that is worth $1 million. Another 900 correspond to another data store that is worth $10,000. You clearly have your priority, right? So that's the target that we're going after. And that I think is also something that we are seeing more and more people adopting as early adopters, because it gives them the priority and consolidation and going to new year in the new economy. I think that's going to help a lot, both on the economic side as well as, efficiency side.
Well, as you were getting nostalgic there at the beginning, I started thinking about, I thought maybe you were going to grab a US keyboard and I would get my console switcher together. We could go work on some servers. But anyway, that's a long ago. I'm curious your thoughts on this, because, in addition to kind of seeing data bubble back up to the surface as a hot topic, people are talking about application security also kind of has gone that way, at least for security teams now. It's not just protocols and boundaries and protecting things and access controls. It's getting into the insides of what's happening within applications, what's happening within data where it's stored as well. So it's interesting, these two things seem to be moving, maybe not necessarily the same speed, but in parallel with security teams getting more into software architecture and API security and things like that, and understanding more broadly data security across all the locations and uses that it may have.
That's absolutely right. So, in fact, on a weekly basis, at least 2 or 3 calls, we get asked, I have some understanding of my data, but I cannot connect it to my application. Like, who is using it, right? And why this application needs this piece of data. One classic example, without bringing names, I'll give you, is there was a very well-known company. They were collecting phone numbers of users and keeping it in a data store. That's a microservice by itself. And that phone number was used only to send one-time passwords and to reset your password, use it as a second factor, and so on, right? So that was great. Everything is fine. Now, the security team or the compliance team does not really understand, if they don't understand what this information is being collected for, they cannot prevent abuse of that data, right? And it did happen at that company. They started using those phone numbers to target ads shown on that platform. And imagine, somebody finds out about it, how much, how much fine, it ran in the hundreds of millions of dollars by a European agency. So finally they fixed it. But, the root of the question is this, right? they were in the crosshairs of many regulatory bodies. So somehow somebody found out. Think about how many other places this is happening, and only waiting to blow up when you become famous, right? Many people can pass it off as a good prompt to have from a business side, but truly to do a good security job, you need to build it when you're young, when the company is young, when the product is young. Even even if you're a few tens of millions of dollars, you need to reconfigure all your applications and security posture and so on, so that regulatory mistakes like this will not cause a huge burden to you several years in the future, right? So that's part of security governance, risk, and compliance, and people are recognizing that. Many of our customers are actually getting to that as well. So the upshot of all of that is data is important, understanding applications is important, but also which data is being used by what application inside your environment is also becoming very, very important.
People always struggle with, do we have time for that? Do we have time to do security? Do we have time to build that in? And the analog I always use is, you don't add airbags to a vehicle after it rolls off the assembly line. It's designed into the product. It has to. Safety is designed into the product, very much like security, data protection, data security. Also, so let's talk a little bit about people that are maybe starting on their journey around cloud native and beginning to do some of their first applications using cloud native architectures. How would you recommend people? How do you build in data security into your process and into your design with your teams doing cloud native?
Yeah, so that's a very problem very close to our heart, and we've been doing that as well. So what you want to do is very similar to think about how you would set up your testing and how you would set up your CI/CD pipelines, how you would set up your automated vulnerability tests and so on. You want data security related activities also to be automated. You don't want it to be manual. You don't want it to be a quarterly event where a bunch of engineers get together, produce a report and move on. And in between, a lot of things happen, right? So what you want is basically automate, number one, discovery of all your data stores. And not only in production, you want to be doing that everywhere, including your in potentially infrastructure as code, in your testing environment, staging environments. Pretty much connect your cloud organization into a tool that automatically discovers and let it run. Second step is to classify the data. You want to know what type of data is where, and have a very high confidence about what exactly it is. So you don't want false positives. You don't want to be looking at the same thing again and again. If you have duplicate copies of data, you should be able to connect data store A is a copy of data store B, and so on. Third step is figuring out who has access. This involves looking at your network relationships in the cloud, DB roles, IAM roles, which eventually give you a list of permissions or access permissions that any resource in your environment has to any piece of data that you've classified. The last step is to figure out all the risks associated with all your resources, and then cross-reference this by connecting the dots from the most sensitive data that you care about, maybe based on monetary value, to how it's actually getting accessed and what are the risks around it. So having an automated solution that connects to your cloud accounts, all your cloud accounts, and then produces these reports and bubbles up the most valuable things that you should do today is what I would recommend, right? And we ended up using our own product on our own environment as well. And we cannot imagine living without it at this point.
You certainly can't increase velocity and operate at scale without automation. It's got to be built into the process.
That's right.
Easier to do that up front. Well, it's been great talking with you, Robbie. I hope you'll come back and talk with us some more as we kind of get into 2023 and continue on our cloud native journeys and deal with all the challenges. We often create new things, and then we learn how to protect them later, right? no different with cloud native as it's probably been with most other technologies. Where can folks engage with Normalize and get a chance to maybe kick the tires or check out what you have to offer?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, learn about us. It's at https normalize.ai. There are a few forms you can contact us. There is a chat bot that you can actually set up a time to talk to one of us. We can give you a demo of the product and so on. So that would be the ideal way to reach out to us.
Great. And it's normalize.ai, is that correct?
That's right, normalize.ai.
Fantastic. Normalize YZE at the end, so normal YZE, just in terms of spelling there, folks. So please check it out. Appreciate you joining us, Ravi, and look forward to talking with you again here in the future.
Thanks for having me, Mitch.
You bet. Take care.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, we're back here at AWS reInvent for our coverage. We're actually up in the Win at our Techstrong TV station. But I'm really happy to introduce you to a friend of mine from the security world. It's only the maybe 25th friend of mine from the security world that we've interviewed this week. I want to introduce you to Jim McMurray. Jim, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Great to be here. I don't know how close our cameras can get in, but if you notice, Jim's wearing a new logo on his t-shirt here. It's called threathunter.ai, and well, we're going to put the logo on the screen so you see it. But for those of you who know me or know Jim, Jim's from the security world, that's a new name, right? James he is Milton Security. Milton Security is a great brand in security. For those of us in the business, we've come to know Milton pretty well. But why the change then? What's happening?
Well, we started Milton. Actually, Milton was a secondary name. There was actually a prior name. Yes. And we decided a few months ago that our community knows of Milton. Yeah. But the industry is bigger than our community.
So I've come to find out too.
Right? And being able to explain to people in a very simple statement of what you do. And your name lends a lot of credence to what value you're offering to the customer, right? And Milton Security, if you're in the community and you work at an organization, you think of us when you need threat hunting done. But there are thousands of other businesses that have a hard time deciphering what does Milton actually do. Mm-hmm. Where does this name Milton come from and why? And we wanted to focus on what we do and what we do best, narrow it down, and come up with a simple statement of who we are. What we are threat hunters. You're hiring a threat hunting team, and you're combining that with all of the AI models that we have created in the last 8 years to combine together to be your threat hunting team.
And you're 100% right? Being in the community, to me, Milton represented quality. You needed threat hunting done. You needed that kind of security service. You called in a Milton, much like you see when people get breached, they say, we hired Mandiant, right? And and that's great, right? There is, but it goes to the old business thing. Do you want a descriptive name, or do you want to come up with some other name that's catchy and people remember or whatever? And certainly Milton is not descriptive of what you did. I feel like, look, our audience is bigger than the security audience, though. We have cloud native folks here, and DevOps, and SREs, and platform engineers, and everything else. When we talk threat hunting, Jim, what do we explain to them what we mean?
Really what we mean is taking in all the telemetry from all of your systems in real time and figuring out in real time, correlating from everything from your endpoints to your cloud systems to your clients who are logging into your systems, what is actually occurring in real time on your systems, on your networks, on your website, on your database. And being able to understand, is this legitimate or not? Is this a threat or not? Is this an attack or not? Is it a low and slow attack? Or is it just a denial of service attack? Should we be worried about it? Who's going to triage it? Who's going to remediate it? Who's going to figure out that all these systems are out of date?
Yep.
So threat hunting combines so much within IT and security. It goes above and beyond just a simple, hey, I'm going to put this blinky light in my network and it's going to tell me when bad things occur.
Right.
Because you still have to maintain it, you still have to babysit it, you still have to update it, and someone's got to look at the logs.
Those
there.
blinky lights don't work. We've learned that the hard way.
We've both learned that, right?
And that, with that in mind, well, it becomes a no-brainer. That's why Threat Hunter's the name. So we're here with 55,000 people at, reInvent. What are you hearing, seeing, in relation? I mean, you're going to meet people who already know you as Milton and say, oh, great new name, Jim. Then you're going to meet other people and say, I never heard of Milton, but I get what threat, like, what's been the reaction out from people?
It's amazing. I would say our friends, the community, really are scared of losing the Milton name.
Yeah.
Because, Milton is just more than a security company. We've sponsored so many things. We do so many things with veterans. There's a lot of things that people are concerned about that have come to me just yesterday and said, is all that going away? And no, it's not.
Good.
Right? Because to me, that is key. It's helping our community.
Well, it's who you are.
Correct.
We could call you anything but late for dinner, right? But you're still going to do the whiskey stuff, right?
Correct.
Okay, you heard it here. The whiskey stays. All kidding aside with whiskey, you do a tremendous amount for the veterans community. And there's no reason that should go away just because you changed from Milton to Threat Hunter, I would
Correct.
hope. I think, unfortunately, what a lot of people, when they see these kinds of things, assume, oh, they must have raised money. And now they have some new corporate overlords, who are going to put the clamp down on doing all the fun, cool things that made Milton such a popular member of our community.
So, no, we have not received any outside funding in the past 15 years.
Yep.
We have no VC, no PE, no angel, and we don't plan on it either.
Well, it's good when you run a profitable business. You don't generally need that stuff.
Correct.
Yep.
Are we the size of some of our competitors? No, but I think we do a much better job at what we do, and we all have fun doing it.
Right.
And coming to work on the Threat Hunter team is really akin to enjoyment. It's enjoying helping your customer, being a partner with them and integrating with them as much as possible. Well, it used to be when we were Milton, I would say when you sign a contract with Milton, you're actually hiring a guy named Milton.
Right.
And that guy named Milton is going to be working for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So you got to treat him just like an employee. You have to onboard him. You have to make him part of your security team. You have to make him part of your change management team. He's got to know everything. And we need a two-way dialogue that's 24 hours a day.
Right.
Without that, then we just become another vendor.
You know what? I very similar philosophy to how I run Techstrong here. I've been through that venture back thing and all of that. I'm done. We have a good time. We try to. We have we come to a place like this rather than being out on the floor and all that craziness. We have a room here. We order in our stuff and we try to make it fun. Try to treat the company as a family and then
convey that sort of feeling to our customers, right?
Right.
Hey, we do care about your business. We want you to succeed because your success is our
Correct.
success.
Correct.
And it's an important thing. I want to ask you another question, if you don't mind. One of the things that really has kind of done my heart good here at AWS reInvent, as well as we were talking off camera, I was at KubeCon up in Detroit about a month and a half ago. After all of these years, no pun intended, after all of these years, security is really becoming job one with so many organizations, not just their security teams, but at the board level, at the developers level, and the ops and the biz levels. Really, people are listening and wanting to do something, and not just saying they want to do something, but putting dollars on the table and resources. What are you saying? Is security really becoming more important?
I think at a board level, and especially in larger organizations, they're very aware that they're particularly liable for things that occur within their firm, right? And they have to sign off documents that state that they are secure, right?
Yep.
And if they are breached, then the public looks towards the board. Where's the failure? Who's the fall guy in all of this? So clearly, of course, in larger organizations with a structured board, it's going to become more aware, even more so than it is now. We've sort of flirted with elevating the CISO to the board level, right? Or make them an advisor to the board level. I think that was a good start, and I think more practitioners really should be, as we all age, should become that role, that CISO role, to be able to be the person in between the actual security teams and the board and explaining to the board what is occurring. I do think that if you go back 5 years ago, DevOps, we didn't see anyone concerned about security.
No. Oh, I know it. When I first started bringing DevOps to RSA, they were like, "What are you doing here?"
Right. Right.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's great. More awareness is more awareness is awesome. And I do think that we are seeing organizations committing to spending monies on security. However, in this current climate, CrowdStrike just announced yesterday that there may be an earnings shortfall and that customers are leaving because of their high cost. Splunk gave notice a few days ago, the same thing.
There you go.
So you see these very large security organizations are being told by their customers they're not going to renew, or they're going to renew at a much lower rate. So how does that impact the actual security teams who work for these customers, right? And where does that burden lie?
Right. Well, the burden doesn't go away or lessen.
Right.
Is it an outsourced situation? Is that something that's good for Threat Hunter? Or I hate to think that we're going to take a step backwards, right?
That's my fear as well.
Yeah.
It truly is. When I start seeing these things that organizations are going to look at security as, once again, as overhead expenditures that can be cut, then we're going to fall back into organizations now becoming more vulnerable
and we'll see
attack.
more incidents and
Right.
stuff. Because, I don't want to end this interview on a sour note. The fact of the matter is, over the last 5 years, 7 years, I think we've made tremendous progress.
Oh, yeah.
To where we were when you were doing veneer networks, 15 years ago, 12 years ago, something like that, right? We've made progress. We develop more secure code now. We test more for security, both prior to deployment and after, than I think we ever did. We use more Threat Hunter and intelligence and detection and response. We do a better job all around. Not to say that the bad guys haven't gotten more devious in their tactics and our attack surfaces have grown, and look, it's a constantly spinning.
I mean, the old adage that we all know: defenders have to be right all the time, and the attacker only has to be right once.
Right.
Right. And that once is going to hit you December 23rd, 2022,
That's the way it goes.
when everyone's gone away on vacation and they go, oh, look, I'm going to chain these 4 different vulnerabilities together and I'm now going to be inside your environment.
Yep, absolutely. You know what we didn't mention? So Milton Security was the old URL. What's the new URL?
Threathunter.ai.
Threathunter.ai. Check it out. Jim, what's the best way? I mean, go to the website, yeah, but like, talk to us a little bit about organizations out there saying, look, I need help. I know I need help. What's the best way to engage? Like, what's the path to engagement look like? Other than going to the website and filling out a contact form, you know, where should they be? What should they be looking for when, okay, hey, you need to call Threat Hunter AI?
So I always give out my cell phone. You know, because every single customer that I have and every single partner we have, everyone has my cell phone.
Right.
And if you have a need and you need to pick up the phone and call someone at 2 o'clock in the morning because you are breached, and this has happened, you just call 714-262-5006.
Right, no prank calls there, but if you need it, I mean, that's the break glass in case of emergency, right?
Right.
And that's what people have come to know from Milton. They're there when you need them.
Right.
And Threat Hunter will be there when you need them too. Excellent, man. Congratulations. Good luck on with the new name. Threathunter.ai. Check it out. We are here at AWS reInvent. We'll be back in just a little bit.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome back to AWS reInvent coverage here on Techstrong TV. Our next guest is Ashley Kramer. She's from GitLab, and we are thrilled to have her here with us. Ashley, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. Look, our audience needs no introduction to GitLab. We've been covering GitLab since we started DevOps.com.
Wonderful.
And it used to be just Sid back then. Believe it or not, I'd interview Sid every other month. I don't think anybody else was talking to him.
He's an amazing person.
Yes, he was. I knew it back then. But anyway, this is the first time we're interviewing you, though. So why don't we, if you don't mind, I don't want to embarrass you, but why don't you give people a little bit of your background?
Sure, I would love to. I'm Ashley. I am Chief Marketing and Strategy Officer at GitLab, and I'm also acting CTO. And I've been here for almost a year now at GitLab, but my background is pretty diverse. I'm a little bit of a unicorn when it comes to how I arrived at becoming Chief Marketing and Strategy Officer. I'm a developer by trade. Okay. So I was a computer science major and worked at some pretty awesome companies like Amazon, Tableau, Alteryx, and wore different hats: product, development, marketing. And I met Sid, a little over a year ago. And he sold me on the GitLab dream, and I've been part of the company now for, like I said, the last year, and it's been an amazing ride. And the beauty of it is I get to sell and market to what I used to be, developers, and that's been really awesome to be on that journey.
Yeah, I would say it's more of a vision than a dream at this point. Dreams, Sid makes these dreams come true at these things.
He makes a lot of dreams.
It's more of a vision and a path.
He makes a lot of dreams come true.
Yeah, but you're right. It is right there. It's interesting. A lot of people hear CMO and they're like, oh, I don't want to talk to the marketing person. I can't tell you how many CMO who are also chief strategy officers I know who actually have more code committed into applications than most of the people out here watching this. And that's a lesson. Right, for our audience, don't judge a book by its title necessarily. There are a lot of very, very smart engineering folks who do business roles, and you're a great example of it.
Yeah,
so
thank you for that.
I'm glad we knocked that out. I want to talk to you about some of the trends and stuff that you've been writing and speaking about. But before we do that, I just wanted to quickly kind of get your impression of reInvent this year.
Yeah, it's been awesome. It's good to be back. I was here last year, but it was at limited capacity.
Yes, it was.
And so I can't say enough about the in-person aspect and seeing, I actually used to work for Adam Silipsky at Tableau. And
really?
So seeing his keynote yesterday was awesome, and seems like we're really starting to see them lean more into serverless technology, and I've been having a lot of customer conversations here around that. And so I'm a huge AWS fan, really excited to be here, and I'm excited for, we still have a few keynotes to go and a few announcements to go, and so I'm excited for the rest of the week.
Absolutely. They've made some great announcements. There's more. And like you, look, 55,000 people. I'll be honest with you, I was a little intimidated being around that many people again.
Really? I love it.
Yesterday, just going downstairs, and we're in the Wynn. We're not even at the main thing. But the lobby downstairs was wall-to-wall people. I haven't been in that kind of situation in a while. And I was like looking for my mask. I didn't know what to do with myself, but I just said, the heck with it, and I walked through. Anyway, it is, but beyond just being with people, the energy, a certain amount of people, a critical mass of people are going to create a certain amount of energy. But there's more to it. There's a zapper, which is, I think they've really captured this year the idea of this ain't 3 years ago's cloud, right? This is today and tomorrow's cloud.
That's right.
And what we're doing with cloud computing and how DevOps plays into that, frankly, and cloud native and SRE and platform engineers and all of these kinds of things that we've seen sort of percolating these last couple of years when we couldn't get together. I'm interested, look, you're acting CTO, CMO, Chief Strategy Officer. You've been seeing trends and writing and talking about them.
I have. So one of the trends is based on the roots of GitLab, which is open source. And so what we're starting to see is, companies that will be successful through whatever the next few years hold have to operate with what we like to call an open source mindset. And so you've talked to Sid, it sounds like, many times, but we are, at our roots, we were an open source, now open core product, and because of that, Sid also infused that within the culture of the company. We've always been all remote, which is pretty awesome. I get to live in Tahoe, which I wouldn't be able to do at many other companies. And as part of that, it's really leaning into our values, which is around transparency. We have a public handbook. You can go and read anything about GitLab, from our company strategy to our product strategy to how I run marketing to how I run engineering. Fully open, fully transparent, as much as we can be at this point as a public company. And we're starting to see that at other companies too, as people had to close down shop, close down offices for the pandemic, and then tried to figure out what are they doing, to go forward. Are they going to be hybrid? Are they going to be all remote? And so that collaboration, that transparency, that iteration is something that we're starting to see infused within other companies, and I think GitLab is on the cutting edge. So that's trend one.
So we've interviewed, I forget, Chief Remote Officer. He lives in Carolina. He wrote a book from GitLab.
Darren?
Darren, yes.
Darren, yeah.
We've interviewed Darren a number of times, and
he's amazing.
Yeah, really familiar with his ideas on remote. When we talk about openness with GitLab, though, a lot of people out here think open. They think open source software.
Yep.
Yeah, I got the code to my software, and whether you do anything with it is another story, but it's open source software. And we build our stack on this open source software. What was always interesting about GitLab is they took the concept of open beyond code, beyond software, and made a company built on open. And I think that is the real special sauce they've had. The book has always been the book, right? I don't know if they have it anymore because I don't look, but they used to have people's salaries in there, and
we still have that. We still have the salary calculator.
And it was radical. When Sid was coming out of Y2K and all of that with this idea. But today, open and open source has become the way, right? It's more the rule than the exception, right?
Yeah, it's like from the company perspective, great openness. I can be a transparent leader, which is really important. I can be my authentic self with my team. But if you think about it, it's also the best product incubator.
Right.
I have the wider open source community contributing all the time to our product. What better way to produce faster innovation in coordination, of course, with the GitLab team members? It's pretty awesome.
Every 22nd of the month.
That's
right?
Still over 130 months and still going.
Well, we have Brendan O'Leary does a monthly.
He's on my team. He's
He
great.
tries to do it every month. Sometimes it's a little later, but he does something on Techstrong TV called The Lab,
Okay.
where he talks about, hey, what's in this month's release?
What's in this month?
And
Yeah.
we try to run it as close to after the 22nd as we can. So openness, number one.
Open,
What
number
else
one.
we got?
Number two is one that really fits what we've positioned as our DevSecOps platform of the future, and that is, we used to say, and it's still true, every company is a software company. Great, and GitLab makes software companies more efficient, but every company is now becoming a security company as well. And that's not just from the technology piece. Obviously, integrated security as part of our platform is a really integral piece, but also it's a cultural thing. It's making sure everybody in the company, no matter what your role is, has security and compliance top of mind. And so we're really starting to see that be a trend. And it is unfortunately based on some of the things that have happened, the breaches, the vulnerabilities that have happened at other companies. We've seen it in the news over the past, but we're really, I've talked to probably 15 to 20 customers since I've been here, joint customers with AWS. That is top of mind for all of them. And that's what we talk about is, great, the technology is part of it, and let's make sure we're constantly testing before we're releasing that code, making sure it's secure, but also make sure it's a cultural shift within your company.
So security is my background, 25 years in security.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, it does my heart good to actually see, we've talked about security being one of your top 3 priorities for as long as I'm in security, but their hands never reached their pockets when it came time to do anything. And you're right, security technology is a piece of it, but just like everything else in our world here in IT, it's people, process, technology, and I'll add culture. And we are now really starting to see the technology for security is there, but the culture of security is everyone's responsibility. The people, I don't care whether you're a developer or an SRE or whatever you are in the scheme of things, security is part of your job too, because collectively, the thing about security is insecurity, innately goes for the weakest link. Yep. It will find the weakest link, and it's usually a person, unfortunately, not a machine.
That's right.
And so it is important. Look, again, GitLab's been out in front of this. I remember, I think it was Philippe came on from acquisition. They first started doing security. But again, that was more technology. Security's been built into the GitLab product for years. But now you're right, we're starting to see it front and center.
And more important and top of mind for our customers. And and it is still very, very high up on our roadmap to continue strengthening and improving.
Right, the technology's never finished when it comes to security.
Ever, nope.
We're always finding, unfortunately, it's just the nature of that beast. What else do we have?
Yeah, and so the final one, the third one is something that I'm pretty passionate about because my background, as I mentioned, is Tableau, which is in the analytics space, and it's really around AI and ML to increase productivity. So what we're seeing in the market right now, unfortunately, companies are figuring out how to save costs. Sometimes, unfortunately, it breaks my heart to see the LinkedIn announcements of layoffs and everything, but those companies are still being asked to deliver. They still have goals to hit. They're asked to do more with less. And in a lot of cases, that means less humans, or that means less money. And so if you think about what's the opportunity here, it's AI, it's ML to introduce things like automation, to take those mundane tasks out of people's lives so we can use the people that are still in seat, the money that we still have, we can use our brain power for the more effective things and automate all of the things that we don't really need to be spending our time out of our lives.
Yep. I've been through a lot of cycles in technology. And I've seen a lot of henny pennies saying the sky is falling, that things like automation or new technologies are going to allow companies to do more with less people. And it's going to be the end of my job. When I first started DevOps.com, it was like, oh, we're not going to need QA people, testers anymore.
Not true.
And we're going to automate security. I wish. I have never seen AI, ML, automation, these kinds of technologies create net less jobs They don't.
Right.
They create net better jobs.
More productive, more
More
efficient.
productive. Well, not only more productive and more efficient, but for the worker, more empowering, more challenging, more stop. You know what AI and ML is good for? Very mundane, repetitive, robotic, if I could use the word, sort of tasks that allow people to use their God-given brains to do exciting things.
That's right.
And so, yes, there are layoffs. It's the cycles of things. There are layoffs. But just because companies adopt AI, ML doesn't mean they're going to have less people.
That's right.
They're going to have better roles. And that's what I always like to tell
More
folks.
impactful, and everybody wants that job where they wake up excited every day.
Yeah.
And they're not excited about those tasks that can be automated out of their
Just
life.
repetitive, back to make baking donuts.
That's right.
No one wants to bake donuts. We could automate baking donuts.
I love to eat them though.
You and me both. All right. Well, you eat them less than I, it looks like. But anyway, so those are our three big things.
That's it. That's
All right.
That's what we're seeing happening in the market, and we're excited for
Absolutely.
another impactful year ahead.
So GitLab.com, obviously, you could stay up to date on everything. But on some of your kind of musings, writings, speakings, how can they follow you?
Yeah, so I have the biggest presence on LinkedIn. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. And I'm starting to build my Twitter presence, but I'm starting to wonder if
we're all looking. You and me, we're all in that boat.
I'm starting to
I
wonder.
looked at Mastodon. There's something else called Post that I'm on a waiting list for. I don't even know what to do.
Yeah, nobody really knows, but LinkedIn's the bit where
I hear you.
post most of my stuff.
You and me both. Actually, it was a pleasure having you on.
Thank you so
This is your first time with Techstrong TV, but hopefully it won't be your last.
I would love to come back anytime.
We do this 3 days a week. Well, we're not in Vegas 3 days a week, but we do it via Zoom and everything else 3 days a week.
Awesome.
And you have a standing invitation.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All righty. GitLab, go check it out. Here at AWS reInvent, we're going to be back in a moment.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hi, everybody. This is Mike Rothman, back in 2023 for our first Techstrong TV, or at least my first Techstrong TV interview. I'm just very excited to be joined by an old friend, Bob Rudis, who is now over at Gray Noise Intelligence. God, I've known Bob for a long time. He is one of the earliest folks that jumped on the whole, wow, data science and math could be applied to, kind of cybersecurity problems many moons ago. And he's just had really an epic run after leaving being a practitioner and applying some of those concepts, joined Rapid7 pretty early on and has been there for a while, building out their research team, and is now with Gray Noise Intelligence. So Bob Rudis, so great to see you, man. And welcome to Techstrong TV. Why don't you just tell, I gave a little bit of a background, but you'll do much better justice to your incredible background in data science and security.
Absolutely, Mike. It's actually great to start the new year talking with you. Happy New Year. Hopefully it will be a happy new year for you and everyone watching and listening to this. So I am VP of, it's a long title. I never use a long title. I was telling Mike that. VP of Data Science, Security Research, and Detections Engineering at Gray Noise. And because we actually do all those things to power Gray Noise, and we need someone to be responsible for all those things. And somehow they picked me to do that, which is crazy, man, and I kind of love it. It's an amazing opportunity. I've known the Gray Noise folks, Andrew specifically, and a bunch of them, going on 5 years now before they were even really a company, and just been amazed at what they've been able to do, and now being inside what we're able to do. But as Mike mentioned before this, I was at Rapid7, chief data scientist there, amazing research team there, a bunch of security researchers and data science folks, and just awesome product folks there. It was awesome working with them. This was just a great opportunity that I couldn't pass up. I ran this little thing called the DBIR for a couple of years before that. I think people might know what that is. But I want to emphasize, and I appreciate Mike saying this, I was a practitioner for 20 years. I was in the trenches, I mean, mostly at Fortune 100 organizations. So I had more money than most people probably watching this call get at their organizations to fight security battles. But after seeing all the stuff coming at defenders and seeing all the gaps that security vendors had, I decided I'm complaining about these things. I should go do something about those things, which is why I transitioned from practitioner to try to help folks at scale. And right now, as I was also telling Mike before this, one of the things that is my mission that the Andrew has chartered us with, Grey Noise's intent is to stop mass exploitation on the internet. I cannot wait to make that happen. And hopefully, I'm just privileged to be a part of that.
Yeah, and I want to kind of highlight on that a little bit, Bob, because stop mass exploitation on the internet, right? So when we think about what it is that we need to do as defenders, right? What we need, to help organizations, protect their stuff, help consumers protect their stuff. I mean, that's really what it's about. So again, I think that there's some, really interesting stuff that you guys have going on at Grey Noise. We'll dig into that a little bit, but there was one thing I wanted to start with, right? Because again, being guys that have been around the block, as you can, so on. So Bob gets on the call, goes, I said, Bob, how you doing? He goes, we're a lot more gray than we used to be.
We are. We absolutely are.
Which is true. Time does march on. But, we started kind of getting into this idea of, has security improved? Right. And I kind of came out with the whole idea that, it's not like it's gotten better over the years. And Bob, you responded, you said, well, I don't know that that's really the case. So let's kind of unpack that a little bit, right? My position is, if we look at it from an outcome standpoint, right, we're still dealing with the same stuff, right? We're still on the same, remember the old hamster wheel of pain, right? Hamster wheel of security pain. We still, run on that, every day, breach-orama and kind of new advanced attacks and different types of adversaries. And all of that seems to be the same as we just, kind of reset into a new year, right? 2023. Why is it going to be different? Is it going to be different? And I'd love to get your perspective on what you think is better, right? Kind of from the last, 10, 15 years that we've been dealing with this.
Sure. So one reason why I indicated that, not everything is better, as you indicate, we are still feeling that every defender, I think, out there feels the hamster wheel of pain to some degree. But what shocked me in my previous role at Rapid7, just to give more shout out to them and the technology there. I joined there because Project Sonar and a less talked about Heisenberg, which is a mirror of kind of what we do, but on a smaller scale at Grey Noise. I got to measure the internet regularly about what's out there and what's on the internet. And you know what? Telnet goes down it's not going down by half every year, but it's going down every year. And the use of HTTPS is going up and I could go through a bunch of different protocols. And even more recently, if you look, if anyone follows Shadow Server, if you don't follow Shadow Server, those are amazing humans and the smartest, coolest people ever. They just noted that, hey, self-hosted exchange and self-hosted vulnerable exchange is also going down, right? So we're making really slow progress, but we are making progress in some of this exposed vulnerability landscape that might be out there, exposed weak configuration landscape that's out there. So I have hope that as that continues and as we see more, this is going to sound wonky, but as we see more government policy and more folks at that level care about this and start to focus on this, my hope is that within 5 years we're going to see a massive reduction of some things that are out there, not just our mass exploitation thing, but just the way that there'll be legislation and requirements out there. But to your thing, sure. If you look at the headlines from the so Microsoft just did their little the deep dive on ransomware for 2022. It's devastating, and this is just from publicly known incidents, right? So ransomware is still bad. We can talk about 2023 for that later. The reality is that sure, there's still a lot of work we need to do, especially at the small to medium sized organizations. I think the bigger ones are funded well enough. I was absolutely funded well enough when I was in larger organizations, and I think they are now. And we just need to see how we can help those small to medium organizations do a better job with the scant resources that they have.
No, that's right. And I think the reality is, yes, we've seen improvement in almost every aspect of how we do the practice of security. Yeah. And that's fantastic, right? I don't want to minimize that at all. Tens of thousands of people have been putting in the work for a long time in order to get it there, right? And I guess just what we've seen is point counterpoint, right? Reaction, counter reaction. And, it's just a matter of what's the next shoe to drop. And I don't know, right? I mean, none of us can really anticipate, kind of what the next thing is. So I think this is just an ongoing battle. And again, I think that math really has a huge role to play in how we have improved a lot of the practice. And again, I'll be one of the first to say, you were kind of on the front end of that approach with Wade and Jay Jacobs and a number of the folks that really kind of looked at, kind of how you can use quantitative approaches to, really start to hone in on, improving, again, the way we do things. And I think that's fantastic. So what are we looking for this year? You mentioned ransomware, right? Kind of that continues to plague almost, not everybody, but, kind of way too many people, from that standpoint. You have all sorts of other, DNS attacks that we're starting to see. You still have endpoint attacks that we're going. So what you look at it from hey, how do we stop this broad concept of mass exploitation, on the internet? So what are some of the things, you're really looking at to, start to help folks get out ahead of that process?
Yeah, so like one of the things that really intrigued me about Gray Noise and the early missions and even its current mission is, the fact that we have and for scale is just amazing. So folks may not know this, but we have like over 5,000 sensors like everywhere across the internet in countries that you wouldn't even expect us to be able to get sensors in. It's kind of amazing. So we get to see all these things happening across the board. So we see all of the botnets and we see all of the additions of exploits that they add to those. And we see new actors come in for various things that are out there. And we get ahead. I mean, so we have a lot of things internally and we don't have time to go through them, so I won't go into it in any detail. But we have a lot of things internally that helps us see emerging things happen like on a daily basis that lets us get ahead and lets us say, oh, there's malicious activity coming from this IP address. And we basically do it on an hour by hour basis. So unlike a lot of other threat intel, and this is not a pimping of the company, just like under a lot of like threat intel places, those things, like, oh, this IP address, we saw it and we're going to keep it on this list for a month. No, we keep it on our list for an hour. And then we let you know that we see it or don't see it on there. So our goal is to basically make that data up to the minute data available to organizations, to ISPs, to network providers, to anyone that can get it in stream and say, don't let this IP address talk to anything on your network. And if we can get to the point where folks from that kind of opportunistic exploitation, to do that, we basically limit it to targeted exploitation, which now we give a lot of folks and organizations time to go focus on the targeted stuff and like kind of weed out the whole point of the noise, right? To weed out all those things out there. So I see from an opportunistic standpoint that are taking advantage of like remote code exploitations, like injection type things or whatever. Those things, I think it's doable if there's a good partnership together with not just us, but like stuff at, again, the federal level and the government level to be able to go do those things. What does concern me is we still have a massive gaping hole on the endpoint. And you said this so brilliantly earlier, like the endpoints are still like the weakest point, and it's not the humans, right? It is like, so, and like, actually, if one thing could happen to every security person listening to this in 2023, stop blaming the humans for stuff. No, really, because the endpoints are insecure pieces of garbage. Windows is garbage. Mac OS is kind of garbage. Linux is just riddled with holes, and thankfully we'll never have a year of the Linux desktop, because if we did, it would be devastating. That's where my concern is, and that's why ransomware attacks work so well, because the endpoint defenses are just built in, and the weaknesses of the operating systems and software are just terrible. There's still credentials everywhere. Like, people just haven't caught up to where we need to be with those things, which is why I did, like, as we're indicating, I think ransomware, and like Brett from Emisoft had a brilliant thing in their column, which was, I think we need to stop calling it ransomware. Like, at this point, this is just, digital extortion. Yeah, and calling it ransomware does it a disservice, because it is now they've evolved their craft to the point where they can actually do things in ways that are that don't necessarily involve ransoms. So I think that's where we need to start putting a lot of the focus. Like, how do we get the endpoints more defensible? And then I guess secondarily is like, there's been a good move with this thanks to cyber insurance in large part, but how do we get companies to start caring about what they put on the internet more than they have in the past, right? And I think if we can get both of those two things, 2023 doesn't have to be like the absolute terrible thing I think it's going to be, because ransomware was really, really bad this past year, and it's going. I don't see that, like, whatever we're going to call it in 2023 getting any better. As a matter of fact, I kind of see it actually getting kind of worse.
Yep, and again, I will continue to focus on the fact that humans are humans, right? So building your security structure to assume that humans aren't humans, right? And again, that doesn't mean that we don't need to train them. We do need to train them, right? We need to give them basic skills to protect themselves. But at the end of the day, if somebody's targeting your organization, there's nothing you're going to do to stop them, from getting in. So it is about, kind of detecting faster. But one of the things we can do, and this kind of plays into some of the trends we're going to introduce next week at our Predict conference. But this idea of the managed network, right, Bob, that's one of the things where we can start to maybe leverage some of the intelligence that we get from guys like you to understand what we can and can't do. But if we're going through a more managed network environment, right, which says, you know what, you don't need to get to that place in Chechnya, right? You should be going to Salesforce. Right, you should be going to Workday. Those are the sites, or Office 365, right? Those are the sites that you need to play with out on the internet, or something that comes through a curated environment like a Google, and we'll block the rest of the stuff, right? So this idea of the managed network, whether you want to call it SASE or whatever it is, but factoring in the reality that we've got all of these remote employees, they're not coming back. Maybe they'll come back for a day, but they're not coming back all the time, right? So we have to start thinking differently about how we provision both the connectivity as well as, you said, right, the protection of what we're doing with a lot of these devices that are out there, the applications that are there. So one of the cool things about, kind of my new role, you can talk about your new role a lot, but, kind of at Techstrong, being in the middle of this, not just security where I've been for 30 years, right, but now DevOps and cloud native infrastructure and this whole, kind of generational upgrade, in effect, that we're trying to, implement within a lot of different environments. Again, it gives us the ability to really start to rethink how we do protection, right? It starts to allow us to factor in some of the really cool analytics that are out there, some of the data streams that help us more specifically identify